Welcome to Winning the Game of Life. Known as Jungleman at the poker table, Dan Cates has gone from being the bag boy at McDonald's with no friends and a dead-end future to winning over $11 million in online poker, over $7 million in live tournaments, and is a World Series of Poker champion. He has found fame, fortune, been to incredible places all over the globe, and connected with some amazing people. It looks like Dan has won the game of life, but that is not the way he sees it. Dan sees winning as doing his part to help everyone in the world win. He knows he can't do it alone, though. He knows it's going to take a collective effort with anyone that wants to see the same thing. Join us each week as Dan starts the conversation to do just that. On the show, Dan will interview incredible individuals that have made the impossible possible, those that have won the game of life, and those that want to help others win as well. Hit subscribe and follow Dan's journey on Instagram at @TheDanCates. Let's explore anyone and anything that can help make this world a better place, increasing the odds of us all winning the game of life. And now, here's your host, Dan Cates.
All right, what's up, guys? This is Dan Cates, otherwise known as Jungleman, which you know me as. And today I've got the 2014 main event winner, who was a pro for 4 years before he won and had an array of interests and an interesting story in comparison to many poker players. I think he's kind of an outlier in the field. Martin Jacobson, what's going on?
Not much, man. I'm actually back in Sweden right now. I'm here for some holiday after the World Series. So it's nice to be back in the summer. I haven't been here in a while in the summertime. It's a very nice city.
Yeah, I've heard Sweden's really nice. I eventually want to go. I've never been to Sweden. I've only been to Denmark and the Scandinavian. Oh no, I've been to, in Scandinavia. I've been to Norway too. I've never been to Sweden.
I go if you have a chance, go to Stockholm.
Oh,
It's similar to Copenhagen or Norway and Denmark, but still different. Like there's a lot of similarities. Like every country that are close to each other and has a lot of history and stuff, you'll see a lot of similarities, but still unique in its own way.
okay. Yeah, I definitely want to go. So, tell us a bit about. Well, you originally were a chef now, or you had the dream of becoming a master chef, I understand. This seems really different from playing poker. This is
Yeah, I mean it's different.
Not the typical origin story of a poker player. I'm curious, what is there any similarity between being a chef and wanting to become a professional poker player? Because being a poker player, I mean, I guess they can be really competitive. Like there's that show that I've watched like twice about chefs competing for a spot or something. Does it have something to do with that level of competitiveness or what?
No, I mean being a chef is creative work, and I think poker can be creative in its own sense, even though it might have be viewed as it, but especially like starting out as a poker player, like back in the day, when you're trying to find your own way as a player, and there wasn't a lot of resources available, so you have to be a lot more creative with how you progress. So I think there's similarities there. I also think there's similarities with, going against the grain and following your own path and exploring maybe unconventional options. Like all my friends growing up, no one decided to be a chef. Like I was a bit of an outlier there in the early days. So I think there's similarities there. But other than that, I don't know how much it is. There's some sense of competitiveness being a chef, and but it's more so the creative side, and that's something I miss actually playing poker. I don't feel the same sort of like fulfillment I felt like as I was cooking.
Okay, that makes some sense. I can see sort of there's some kind of room for creativity in poker and like big bet games. Not really in limit games, just a little bit, but you have to really look for it. Yeah, the unconventional thing makes quite some sense. So now that poker is uh not satisfying you, what other stuff are you doing? I saw that you were also a mixed martial arts person. One way in which you're an outlier compared to most people in poker is you're in shape, which I'm sitting here when I'm at the table, I'm like thinking, oh man, uh got to do something about this. But could talk about that to some extent. So there's mixed martial arts. I saw you're part of uh reg as well, rational effective giving. um, you do some angel investing. There seem to be more open-ended things to be involved in. There might be some things I'm missing here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean those are all true. I'm I'm sort of exploring a lot of different um hobbies and other things that I might enjoy, and I think that's, I guess that makes me a bit of an outlier as well in poker, because most poker players, at least at the highest level, they're 100% dedicated to poker, whereas I've always sort of dabbled into other fields as well, especially after winning the main event. I lost a little bit of a motivation to continue playing. I've sort of felt like I've reached the top, and I didn't really know what to go from there. And that's really when I started exploring other options, like starting a business, becoming an entrepreneur, investing. Um, so yeah, and then also enjoying life outside of poker, and work, such as training and having a good routine. I mean, it's always something that I've prided myself with, that I've always been very like professional in terms of my preparation before I play, because I've always viewed poker as an endurance game where it makes a lot of sense to take care of your body and mind, and sort of prime that to be in perfect condition to be able to make the best decisions possible. So that for me has always been like half of the game in itself, apart from studying and working on the technical stuff.
Okay. Okay. And by the way, I want to add, we happen to have that in common. I also, since I experienced extreme success in poker, I got bored of it. I was like, what's the point of this? It became effectively a rat race for me. I can make some money and whatever. Um, so, and a bit of that pressure as well. And by the way, I wanted to add that actually, it may not be the case exactly in poker. I don't know. I haven't looked properly at the data, but it has been shown that many Nobel Prize winners, often, more often than not, actually have other interests outside of their interests. In fact, it benefited them in some kind of way, which is a little bit mysterious, because I don't really see how other things benefit. Leading into the mental preparation thing, I can absolutely see how that benefits, and how being in shape would benefit in some, to a certain extent. I think, especially for most people, it will benefit them, and some kind of mental preparation. It's probably a good idea. Most people are not doing that, I think. Uh, I myself am only pull it out when I really require to. Can you go into what your mental preparation was before, well, just in general, and also before winning the main event? If it was especially special before the November 9, that would be something that would require, that would be a good time to prepare, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I took that break. That was during the time where it's November 9, so we made a final table in July, and then we got a 3 or 4 month break before. So I saw it as an excellent opportunity to put myself in the best position possible to take it down. And so I dedicated almost as much time to mental and physical preparation as I did to the game technical, game planning for the final table. So I was already meditating before, but it was definitely something that I focused on a lot more. Sort of visualizing how the final table was going to play out. And yeah, of course, like made sure that I was in tip-top shape to be able to pull off a 16-hour session.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything like specific that you did in meditation? Was it just like typical meditation, like focusing on your breathing? Was there any gym involved? Was it like some kind of scene out of one of those movies where like the guy is preparing for a fight and he's running up the hill and he's like doing jumping jacks and was it something like that or what?
No, so what I did once I made a final table, I thought it would be a good idea to ask all my closest friends what they would do in this spot, because it's obviously something that people have thought about, and it would be sort of easier for them to give me advice that way. So a lot of people came with some really good advice, a lot of my friends, and we sort of worked together as a team. So they helped me come up with a lot of good tips and strategies on how to prepare, how they would prepare. But what I did the most was I did a lot of guided meditation, a lot of yoga, a lot of running, and yeah, focused a lot on sleep, getting good night's sleep, being able to like lower my adrenaline levels after playing the first day or the second day, just stuff like that. Supplementation, eating clean, making sure that my energy levels were as good as they could be.
Okay, well, congratulations also for being I just can't see like many of the other guys doing that. Maybe they are, and I just don't know. I just have not really heard of that many people doing that kind of stuff beforehand. I imagine it adds like some kind of edge that people aren't really thinking about. For sure, like the lower your adrenaline levels, the less likely you'll be your mind will be dazed in some really frustrating situation. Um, the less likely you are to make a rash decision or to be patient. I can certainly see how these things would help. Do you have routines before you generally play poker? I believe I mentioned that you've been a professional. You were a professional for 4 years before you won the main event, also. So perhaps you had been doing this kind of work on the side in addition to, well, before the main event, or is it just for this moment?
No,
Uh,
for sure. I started working. I'm sort of experimenting my whole career with how to reach peak performance and being able to excel and do stuff that other people don't. Because I never view myself as the most like game technical player and the most like gifted in that sense. So I always try to look for other edges to give me uh something that I can excel in, and this is something that I found, and also that I personally enjoy. So I haven't just been doing it for poker. I'm doing it for because I do enjoy it. Like it's a big passion and a hobby of mine, and I care a lot about health and being the best person I can be, like aside from being a poker player. So it sort of came natural to me, but then yeah, like I said, once I made a final table, I was focusing. I had way more motivation to sort of go extreme, and it was a lot easier to put in the work.
millions of dollars is a good incentive.
Yeah, that, and becoming the world champion and realizing that this is most likely your only shot at it.
Yeah, well, health and what else? Mindfulness is nice, but yeah, it helps to have the millions of dollars on the side and
I think we saw that this year as well, with Espen winning. I saw a lot of similarities in his approach, and he could have said him, he didn't have the break, but luckily he was already
what?
prepared.
I wonder if he's gonna watch this.
Oh, maybe I should have him on the show.
Okay,
That would
if
be
I have him on
interesting
the
to
show,
hear
I might
about.
have to tell him he said that, or someone said it. Maybe it would be good
Yeah,
to see his reaction.
yeah. No, but it's always nice, you see someone like that cares a lot about their um, composure and focusing on and lowering their adrenaline, and you could see the difference in the heads up match in particular. You could see Adrian was very frustrated with how things were going and how slow Espen was playing, and he was just taking his time and not like letting anything affect him, and he was just doing his thing, and then it worked out.
I will say that when people are playing slow and deliberate, I can find it super frustrating. So I don't know if I advocate that or not. I do advocate discipline, not my strong suit. I guess, yeah, viewers discipline and playing using a little bit of tempo when you play. It's not a bad idea. Certainly has a. It's gonna frustrate your opponents. Why not? I never really used that edge, but that actually does seem like an edge. I'm keeping an open mind here. It's just something that I don't like to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It frustrates me as well when people are like clearly wasting time. They're taking 10 seconds to make up a pre-flop decision. But I think there's a time and a place, and if there's ever a time to do it, it would be the World Series main event final table. When you're playing for so much and such a unique spot. But doing that day one or whatever, like it's kind of ridiculous.
That's true. I guess there can be some situations where it can work. One thing you have to keep in mind is how enjoyable you are to play with. But in that situation, it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Heads up at the final table. Yeah, maybe that would be one of the situations where I'm like getting ideas now. I'm thinking of how to apply it because it would drive people. I guess in really competitive games, it's a good idea. I
Yeah.
don't really get against VIPs specifically, so it'll piss them off too much.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So like I said, there's a time and a place. But when you play a tournament, it's such a unique environment that you're probably only going to be in that spot versus that opponent once. So it doesn't really matter as much. But if you're playing a cash game, there's of course way more other considerations to keep in mind.
Hmm. Okay. Well, let's talk about some other things. What do you think some of the personality traits that have helped you with poker, and is there any crossover from them to martial arts or to being a chef? I know we talked about creativity a bit. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I'm more competitive than I would like to admit, and I probably realize. I've never like viewed myself as very competitive, but then every now and then I realize that it's actually a trait of mine that it's fairly strong compared to most other people. Maybe it's because I'm comparing myself to my peers, to other poker players. Like a lot of my friends, they like to gamble on anything really. Like they're and they get really into things like side games and all that stuff. And that's never really interested me. But if I compare myself to like a regular person with a regular job, it's like a different story. Then in that sense, I'm very competitive. So that would be one, and then being patient, I would say. In general, I'm quite patient when it comes to poker, at least. Maybe not so much in other areas of my life, and being a professional, I would say as well.
Being professional?
Being professional in my approach, so like taking it seriously. But I mean, it's something that most people do these days. But back in the day, when I started out, it was not as common. People got drinking the night before, and not put it in the work, studying and all that stuff.
Sure. So something like discipline, you could say.
Discipline, yeah, that's a better
Okay,
term
okay.
for it, I suppose.
Well, it seemed like you're well. Would you say that you're hardworking also? Because I mean, at least in the is it the holistic side, the side that it's related to to overall well-being? It sounded like you're pretty at least some kind of combination of disciplined and hardworking. Um, would that be a factor as well, or do you think it's not necessarily? Does it go boil down more to talent?
No, I think it's a mixture of everything. I think, yeah, for sure. I think I have talent for the game and for being a poker player. Being a poker player is so much more than just having talent for the actual game, like the game, understanding the game theory behind it and being able to play. Uh, but yeah, I think once I dedicate myself to something, I go all in. Like I'm that sort of personality with which
Hmm.
I don't think it's uncommon for poker players. We're
Yeah,
usually all in or nothing in everything we do. And so I think that goes kind of hand in hand with being hardworking, because you get very dedicated to one task, and you just become sort of obsessive about it, and you spend a lot of time and energy and focus being able to solely focus on this one thing, which is poker.
sure. I found that to be true also. I was that way, so there's that. And there's actually a book called The One Thing and how that leads to more progress on the whole. Um, the irony is I haven't really applied that effectively to my life lately. But definitely for poker, definitely in general, that's the fastest way to make progress is inundate yourself with um, with everything that you want to do. Um, yeah, I would say be for the people watching, definitely competitiveness has seemed to be an overarching trait that every single person has that has reached the heights of poker. Um, so I'm curious, what does your competitiveness show up in martial arts? And I know that you're involved in REG, as I said, rational effective giving and angel investing. Is well, there's a few different things. Does the competitiveness apply in those areas as well, or are you doing these for other reasons? Are you as passionate about any of these things? Um, yeah, why
I
don't you
think
go ahead?
okay. Also, we start with mixed martial arts. It's something I've been following for the past 10 years or so. I would say
Mhm.
I only started actually practicing training martial arts maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So I was following the sport beforehand. Um, but I think what fascinated me the most about it and draw me to it was problem solving, and it's very similar to poker, where you have your strategy and your opponent's strategy, and then you're trying to figure out whose strategy is the best, and sort of a zero sum game in that sense as well, I suppose, where one person is always going to come out on top, and that fascinated me, and yeah, it kept me intrigued, and I wanted to learn more about it, and I think it's and especially considering the risks, the stakes that you're playing. When you're playing with your life basically, like when the cage locks, it's one, yeah, two people are competing for at the highest stakes. So that's super interesting to me, and also all the different techniques that you can learn. It's like an endless learning spectrums of all the different martial arts. So I started doing boxing about 7 years ago. So that's sort of where I started, and yeah, I realized the progression was very steep, at least in the beginning. So I progressed pretty quickly. So that was motivating as well. I never like took it as far as like taking on matches or something. Like the furthest I went was doing some sparring
I was to ask
in
if you've ever
classes.
been in a cage fight. You're mentioning how when you get in the cage, you can't get out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I had a friend who did that, so anyway, so and then recently, about 6 months ago, I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, and that I fell in love with like straight away, because that to me is like complete problem solving with very little risk, as opposed to other forms of martial arts.
Okay. I have been interested in this sort of thing myself, but for a couple other reasons. It's actually part of problem solving for myself because I do all sorts of workouts, and frankly, I'm bored as shit doing a lot of them. I don't really like going to the gym and doing the same thing over and over. So I decided, okay, is there something I can do that I can actually use later and hypothetically get in some cage fights? But it might be too dangerous. That's part of the problem with fighting is it's like you can say that it's zero sum, but the issue that I find with it is it's sort of less than zero sum unless you're like a top fighter. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of incentive other than you can protect yourself. There might be something in it like related to self mastery. This actually leads to a question I'm about to ask you. Um, but I happen to be interested as well, and particularly in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu based on my research. but it was also in the form of solving a larger scale problem for myself of where to orient my learning and to try to solve multiple problems at once, you could say. My learning, my career, and also fitness, all three of those things. And to apply the strengths of strategy. But the question I've got for you is, through training martial arts, is there any crossover from that to skills to life? Because in poker, I find that there are a couple subtle skills. I would presume in martial arts that there might be some, and I would think that there might be some in some other areas as well. And were you able to use it in any kind of career aspect, or you just do it for fun, or yeah, why don't you tell me about that?
I think one of the biggest benefits is that it really humbles you. You know, you go to your first, especially BJJ practice in class, and you get to roll with all sorts of people at different ages, different like men, women, kids, like you name it, old people. And it doesn't really matter because it's all technique and it's very little strength involved if you know your technique. So I think that is one of the biggest benefits that I felt so humble, but also like so appreciative of the sport and the art form. And it was just such a nice like community, I think. So a lot of these mixed martial arts gyms, like they might seem like terrifying at first, like showing up to your first class, but then once you actually take that step and you realize that everyone's there for the same reason and everyone's super friendly and appreciative and have something in common, it's super rewarding. I feel so much better afterwards. So that's really my biggest motivation, I would say, apart from obviously I like to be physical, like do physical activities as well, but I also get bored doing the same workout, so I try and mix it up as much as possible. But there's only so much you can do on your own, and I really appreciate group training and especially learning a new skill as you're exercising and getting the benefits from that on top.
Okay. So would you say there's anything in the form of self-mastery other than it being humbling, or has there been any crossover from that to poker, any crossover from that to any other areas of your life?
Not really. Being more humble and more self-confident, I would say, brings a lot of confidence in yourself and your own abilities, as well as being humble. So it's that mixture of those two things. Yeah, I would say, but there's a lot of similarities to poker and martial arts for sure. Just with the problem solving, that it's like two different strategies, and you're trying to figure it out. It's kind of like playing heads up.
Oh, whoops. Okay, that seems like might suit me, I suppose. I have been looking into. Well, I had the idea to try Japanese jiu-jitsu, to be precise. I happened to meet someone who was a bit of a master in that field. But yeah, I'll give it a try. Let's talk about REG, or rational effective giving, and angel investing. What do these have to do with competition? Because to me, I'm thinking of these things, and I don't see a competitive aspect to them. I can see some elements of creativity being applied to it. What is it? What got you to these things? And is there any relevance to your other interests?
I would say REG is more about purpose for me and doing something, giving back and doing something that actually feels more rewarding than just playing. Because I think playing poker is sort of like a selfish thing.
Yes.
I play for myself. Like I'm not providing any value for anyone else. Like I'm trying to take other people's money, and you're trying to take my money. But those are just the rules of the game, and it's fun. And we love the game. We try to figure out the best strategy for it, and we're trying to beat each other. But at the same time, it doesn't really provide that much value. So for me, it's always been important to also doing something else aside and trying to give back, and that's where REG came into the picture. And it was as I made the final table that I reached out to them. I reached out to Liv and Igor, the friends of mine that started it, and because I knew I wanted to support some sort of charity organization and give them exposure for the final table, and Reg just aligned perfectly with my core values, and I saw the benefits and the way they think about charities, charity donations as opposed to regular organizations, and how you take the poker principles or the principles we use in poker and finance and apply them to charity. So you distribute the funds with from a poker perspective rather than like giving with your heart, and all the fees and all the, like a lot of the donations just get eaten up by administration fees and charities that aren't very effective, meaning that not a lot of the money is actually going to the right cause or being used in the best effective way.
Oh yeah, there's lots of inefficiency. I actually don't agree with their model for a certain reason, but they're close. Their general idea is good. There's always better and better ways of doing things. And I want to give you an idea actually about poker. In a way, poker doesn't have to be purely selfish. This is where I got I had the idea myself to entertain, because not all ways of giving value are like strictly monetary or in terms of like what people need. It's also in terms of entertainment. This is why I personally have thought to make the podcast. And also, this is a version of entertainment and, giving value in the version of curiosity and giving ideas and opening people's minds, that kind of thing. But also, basically, entertaining is a way of making it more fun for everyone, because it's one obvious issue of tournaments these days is that people lack dimensionality, and they're not making it that much fun. So that might be an idea if you're interested to explore, because creativity seems to be something that you're interested in. And I can see there's a similarity, at least for me. I also, by the way, did cooking over lockdown. I took quite a few cooking lessons, and I got really into making these artistic dishes and things like that. Was that something that you did? Were you really when you made dishes, did they look like pieces of art, or were you experimenting with the ways to add different kinds of sauces, stuff like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think cooking is a real art form, and especially I have very high ambitions as a cook, and I wanted to become a chef and work in a Michelin star restaurant and work myself up. And that's kind of where my poker career started, because I got a job opportunity in Barcelona at a 3-star Michelin restaurant, and then that job offer never materialized. And during that period of time, I was playing poker as a hobby.
Will you be pursuing that dream now that you've achieved essentially total freedom? You can do whatever you want. Is that on your list of things to do? I mean, that way you get to pursue creativity, and seems like an inspiring goal. Or have your goals changed?
Yeah, I think they changed a little bit, to be honest. I think, I got a taste of what cooking is really like, especially at a high level. It's very, very hard work, and you really have to love it to be dedicated and to sustain that pressure, because there's a shit ton of stress, not just on your body, but also like physical and mental stress. So no, I don't think I'll be pursuing that career anymore, given that I'm now about 15 years older than I was then. When I was 20, I had a little bit different ambition. But I'll always love cooking, and I'll love to do it in a different way, maybe not on the same level as I wanted to do back then. But I've been dabbling into like starting businesses where I would use my creativity and create food for people. I think that would be very fulfilling. Nutrition has like always been a big passion of mine. And I like to dissect like everything I eat and try to optimize it for not just performance, but for longevity and health.
Maybe starting a business related to that or being part of some business you invest in, maybe that makes sense. Or using the knowledge that you know from cooking and nutrition uh, to be a part of one of the um, to help you invest in the right kinds of companies, that kind of thing. Maybe that makes sense. I don't really know. I don't know a ton about nutrition. Know a little
That's
bit
a
about.
very hard. It's a very difficult market to break into, I think, if you have very little experience. So I think I've dodged some bullets throughout my career, but where I've been close on like opening up a juice bar in like 2012 or something like that,
Opening up a
or
juice
even
bar.
a juice bar, like a fresh juice bar. You know, when there was like
Oh,
when
oh,
everyone was
juice.
juicing.
Oh, really? You
Juice,
opened up a
yeah.
juice bar. Okay.
Was that?
You opened up a juice bar.
No, I was close to a
Oh,
couple times actually. And then I wanted to open up a healthy like fast food chain, and I had a bunch of different ideas, and I almost pursued them. But I mean, now especially with COVID, I'm really glad I didn't. And I have invested in like a couple businesses that are doing that sort of stuff. But you know, most of them haven't worked out because it is a very tough industry, and it's sort of what I've gathered so far is that there's a few people or a few companies making have the complete market share, and it's very hard to break into that and get some sort of market share where it's actually worth your time and effort that you
hmm.
put into it.
Okay. Yeah, all these big industries, you have to find some kind of niche. It's pretty
Exactly.
much what every single person says when you're trying to create some kind of business or whatever. There's no competing with these like massive conglomerates. It's not the way. Um,
No. And there's only so many niches left to do. You know, you can yeah, sure, you can open a vegan place, but there's a million vegan places nowadays, and like it's changed a lot in the
yeah,
last 10 years, I would say. So this
it'll
was
be
like, mind you, this was long before there was a juice bar in every corner. So but I would have had a lot of competition, and I probably wouldn't have been able to keep up. So
that's the cool thing about poker actually is that kind of anyone can start winning. I think. Like, I don't think that to win at poker, if you find the right game, you have to be obsessed with it. If you're coming from some other industry, it's like kind of easy to break into. So that's one interesting thing about poker is like there's plenty of businessmen that don't really need the people that are just successful at anything that don't really need to be obsessed with it to get into it. Would you agree with that?
yeah, I mean, in the short term, I would, but I mean, it all depends on your game, your playing environment. If you're better than the people you're playing against, if you're playing in a juicy private game where everyone sucks, like yeah, you don't need to be very good at it. But if you're playing like yourself, like if you're playing in Bobby's room, like you have to be one of the best to have an edge and win long term.
Well, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
can't just
I'm not
show
talking
up.
about like competing in Bobbies. I'm talking about like beating
Okay.
your boys or
Oh, I
like
see.
beating
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah, yeah.
business associates or whatever it is.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, I
I mean,
agree with that.
yeah, it's unique in that way, which
And it's
compared to
unique that anyone can win short term, right? Anyone can show up to one game and have a winning session.
well, yeah, but anyone can also just win against their friends. Like I guess that's sort of different. That's a longer version of winning in the short term. It's not super long term. It's not okay. We're gonna go and play the toughest games in the world. We're just gonna figure out how to beat people in my local vicinity, kind of thing. It's much easier to beat one or a few people where you're not forced to compete against the entire world. Whereas if you were to enter the nutrition market, you can't really make a business out of you can't really make a business out of selling your own nutrition products locally, if you know what I mean. I mean, you can kind of, but you can't make that much money from it, and it's going to require way, way more work than just learning a few basics of poker. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
I would agree with that. And I also think that as a poker player, it's easy to be overly optimistic about other industries.
Oh
You
yeah,
look at as a
yeah.
poker player, you look at business like, oh, well, like why are they doing that? Like this is such an obvious thing like to fix. They should just do this and that instead. They should just tweak here and this is how I would have done it. And you just think that it's super easy, but it really isn't. Like there's a lot more to it. So yeah, I
Oh,
think
that's a
you
good
got to be
point.
somewhat cautious and not compare everything to poker. I think that's something that I've done in the past as well. That I always see nothing's risky to me anymore. Like everything. That's why I've invested in a bunch of businesses that failed because I read their decks and I was like, oh, this doesn't seem that risky compared to playing these $10,000 tournaments and
Yeah, I
that's how I
made that
compare
mistake.
the risk factor there.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Well, would you say that poker's helped you in other industries? Studying poker, is it help? Are the skills transferable, or what do you think?
Uh, yeah, I think they have, but it's hard to pinpoint exactly where. Uh, if I were to quit poker today, like where would I go? Like where can my skill set transition into and fit into society and the normal like workforce? So I think the most obvious one would be going into trading. I have a
Mhm.
lot of friends who've transitioned into trading, and they've actually been sort of headhunted for big trading firms because there's this one skill that's very hard to teach that poker players are sort of natural at, and that's being okay and taking risk. Like we see value in EV and we just max it and we don't think twice about it, especially if we're playing on somebody else's money.
Mhm.
It's such a no-brainer for us, whereas other people, this is from what I've heard, people has long degrees and are very accomplished like elsewhere in finance or whatnot. They really struggle to pull the trigger, even if because they just see the risk factor and they're just too uncomfortable to maximize the opportunity.
I think you kind of answered the. I was asking a bit of a bigger question, in are the traits transferable, generally speaking? But you kind of answered that actually. At least this one, it's undeniable, is that poker helps you to take more risks in ways that are strategic. I think we can
Yeah,
agree on that.
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, trading is the most obvious comparison. I think other ideas of risks are less tangible. Like starting a business is very different kind of risk. But yeah, I think it's not so easy to see the clear parallels and how poker can help in those areas. That's what I'm personally trying to explore. Is there crossover? But I think there is. It's just not that obvious. What about in rational effective giving? I would say it can be, but I know I heard that you had that their metric of success was how many lives are saved. I don't agree with that, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean that's super rational approach. I'm not sure that I agree with that either, but I think that um as opposed like what they're doing and the way they're distributing the money,
Hmm.
I think is great and a much better approach to the traditional where uh most people when they give to charity, they donate to causes where they feel some sort of connection and they feel it feels good for them to give to that organization because they have some sort of connection there, like emotional attachment. Whereas reg doesn't really care about that. They just see this is how these funds can make the biggest difference. And yeah, they measure it in saved lives, which could be a little bit too extreme perhaps.
I think it's
um
not extreme enough.
you don't think it's extreme? Okay,
No,
so
I
what's your
don't.
approach? What do you suggest?
Well, this is a way that I want to point out. Firstly, that cold rationality can apply, but there's a. I'm going to mention a how do you say a caveat to this because there's a really tricky caveat, especially considering you mentioned that people should be allowed to give freely to things that they believe in and that they choose to. It's a tricky one to navigate, but that's a different story. I'll get to that in a second. But what I think is okay, so there's a bunch of people whose saving lives is nice, but there's a bunch of people people either do good, well, they do a range of good and bad and whatever, but it's kind of like, well, you can't save everyone, first of all, and we're not at the point where we can do that. And part of the
Right.
problem with that is there's lots of people out there not doing good things. And it seems like if resources are going to be allocated, they should be allocated to one, the people that are helpless and can't decide for themselves. In my view, that's the children. I think the children are the biggest people in order to impact and set them on the right path and teach them to do good. But you can allocate to the people that are actually doing good, that are gonna like use the resources wisely to better themselves and to help other people. There are plenty of people that are doing the opposite. There are plenty of people that are wasting their resources and using money for bad. Um, and well, what was I gonna say? And like you don't really want to keep those people sustained. If you were gonna give resources to people, give them to the ones that are gonna like keep using them to make a bigger and bigger positive change, ideally. And just like, and you want to reward good behavior too. You don't want to communicate the message, oh, it doesn't matter what you do, you can just exist. You want to communicate the message, no, if you do good, you'll get good, right? And you want to also communicate the message, if you do bad, you get less. If you
Yeah.
waste your resources, you get less. This is what the workplace communicates implicitly. This is why people get rewarded for the work that they do. And this is why, by the way, that businesses tend to be more effective to creating positive change than, or it's one of the reasons anyway, than pure charity. You don't want to just give freely without no consequences, in the sense of giving versus not giving. You can take away extra resources. And I don't think if we're just looking at lives saved, I don't think that factors that in. And oftentimes, you don't want to get to the point where the lives are so far gone that I mean, you want to save lives, sure, but like we want to save the lives maximally as much as possible in the long run, which means in a way that is purely ethical, that uh, involves helping the people as much as possible. They can continue to help more and more and more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but for sure, there should be some sort of, some business metrics like KPIs and performance trackers. And yeah, if you don't perform, you have to be responsible for it and explain why, like what happened with the funds and what have you done so far. And if someone's doing well, they should be allocated more resources than others. I think that makes perfect sense. I also like what you said about focusing on the children, because I think that's for sure a very neglected category. And the children are, of course, the future. I think that's one of the biggest problem with society, that we're just focusing on the symptoms so much. We're not focusing on um, preventing natural disasters and things that are inevitable in the future, but like pretty forthcoming. Like we know that they're coming. We know that these things are going to happen, but we don't care about it until they actually happen. And so much could be prevented and eased by, like, so much suffering can be eased by focusing and being having a little bit of better foresight of what's coming.
Oh yeah, 100%. The absolute root, in my view, is the children. This is why I'm personally shifting my focus there. I'm attempting to use the strategy skills from poker in this domain. That's what I personally believe. Yeah.
And
And by
to take it one step further, I think it's crazy that there's no such thing as parenting school. Like anyone can become a parent. Anyone can be responsible to raising a child for 18 years, and you don't need to do anything. Like that's crazy to me.
I wonder, there's probably some kinds of things. You'd be surprised at how many different kinds of people and organizations there really are once you really dig into some of these. Really dig. I've just found I've been continually surprised at how many things there are. That one I don't specifically know, but that would be, if it doesn't exist, that would be a good idea. If it doesn't exist, they don't. And even if it does exist, it's still not a bad idea for a business, just because it's not doesn't exist so much that clearly the space is saturated. But there's all kinds of resources out for parents to learn how to raise their children. There's some data on this, by the way. In
Okay.
fact, it's been shown that what matters the most is not so much the neighborhood, but actually pockets of neighborhood that children are raised in, particularly role models. If they have a good role model, then they'll uh, lead to be better people, as it turns out. Like that was one of the biggest factors. Being in rich neighborhoods actually did matter quite a bit. Uh, Spoiler, sorry, I guess.
Yeah, but for a bunch of different reasons.
Yeah, but I think it's for the factors that are correlated.
Mhm.
Anyway, so what's on your plate next? What are you just like are you gonna be doing much poker in the future? Are you just looking at it as like a way to make money? What are you yeah, what are your plans?
So right now I'm doing a lot of coaching. So I've started a poker course during the pandemic when I got sick of just playing online poker. So I've always sort of split my time between playing live and playing online. And when the pandemic happened and we couldn't play live poker for 2 years, it was 100% online. And it's I've always kind of viewed online poker as sort of a means to, well, I want to make money, but also get better at the game and get the reps in because you can get so much more volume in and so much easier accessible. But I really miss live poker. So I started coaching, which is something that I really enjoyed as well. Having that social relationship and being able to teach what I've learned or what I know and follow other people's journeys as they're getting better and achieving their goals. I got a lot of satisfaction from that.
Oh,
So I'm
really?
going to continue doing that, and then I've also accepted a position at a blockchain gaming company that are uh, supposed to launch. They're working on their MVP right now. It should launch by the end of the year. But in the future, they're going to develop a poker department, which I'm going to help project manager project manage. And so I'm super excited for that. It's called Gamble, and it's going to have a lot of benefits to the traditional betting industry.
Okay. So you're involved in even a couple more things than I knew about.
Yeah, yeah, excited for the future. But at the same time, I'm going to continue playing poker for as long as I enjoy it, and as long as I find it competitive and I get enjoy playing and find it challenging. I don't think that is ever going to change.
Well, I'm sure uh sure could find some people to I'm gonna say something like sure you can find the right challenges and somewhere in it. Uh Maybe you'll find some private games or something I play and it wouldn't surprise me. Um okay, I've got a couple more questions. So I want to ask what led you to deciding to coach?
Well, it was during the pandemic, and I just got fed up with playing online poker,
Mhm.
and a friend of mine reached out to me, and he was doing a Zoom course with a couple of his students, and he asked if I wanted to join him for a chat, and I said yes, and we developed this program where we were teaching through Zoom during the pandemic, and it was super fun and really rewarding because we got that interaction going, and um, being able to teach like what you know, and you realize how much you actually know because it's something that you just take for granted. That you don't feel like you don't know anything. Like if you just show up and play, and you haven't actually learned much throughout the years. But then once you realize that there's levels to this, and as a new player, they really appreciated like getting that knowledge and that information. And yeah, it was just really rewarding and really fun. And then I started doing coaching on one-on-ones on my own, and then eventually I created this online course, which is a micro course of focusing on short 15-minute sessions breaking down poker concepts, so you can kind of use them to a wide variety rather than the traditional like 60-minute instructional videos where you're breaking down one hand and Pio solver or whatnot.
It sounds like an outlet for your creativity also, as you're applying your creativity to finding new ways to teach people, or ways to teach people that are more digestible, perhaps.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun creating that, and it's been a fun journey.
If you want to, you can leave a link to one of those videos. I'm happy to put it up on the podcast so that people can take a look for themselves. I myself was a little bit curious to see what you do a little bit differently, because I have not heard of 15-minute coaching videos, and what you're doing seems to be teaching principles rather than, okay, we're going to look at this hand and look at the specifics of this hand. I myself can barely talk about a specific poker hand for very long. It's usually too small picture
Yeah.
to be inspiring for me. And one last thing is, why was it, I guess, the blockchain thing with serendipity? Is that something that you're really interested in as well? Is crypto something that's a big interest, or are you in it for the money? What's the story with that?
Well,
I
no,
won't
I
judge
mean,
if you're in for the money.
no. I honestly, I've never been that into crypto as much as my friends. Many of my friends, they jumped ship of poker when crypto started becoming big in 2016, 2017. And I was always like kind of slow to that transition, and I was like following a little bit what they were doing and what was going on in the world, and I invested a little bit on my own, but I never really got that into it. I started reading up on the technology, and I never really got it, to be honest, until like recently. But and I don't claim to get it like the whole picture, but I understand it a lot better, like the technology and the use cases for it now. But it's more so the opportunity of, well, for one, being part of a startup, but also the opportunity to create a poker room that has a lot of benefits as opposed to the current poker rooms out there now. So you'll be able to play poker on the blockchain. I mean, that's the concept. It hasn't been built yet, so it's we're planning on launching the poker platform in early, or yeah, we're going to start working on it in 2024. So it's a couple years away, but yeah, to be able to modify and create a poker room as I would have designed it. Maybe it's my optimism of being able to simplify everything, but I think that creative process I'm really excited about, and being able to work with the developers and help them create a poker room that's much better than what's offered today.
Okay. What benefits are, yeah, and do you want to go into what benefits this new one has, or yeah, if you want to promote it, that's also fine, or if you want to wait?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the one of the biggest benefits is that it will be part of a global player pool, so you'll be able to play on it wherever you are in the world, which is not currently possible on basically any sites. But they will also be much lower fees, so the rate will be much lower than the traditional, because they'll burn all the profits. So there's a different coin model. So the profits will be burned, and so they're not making money from the rake per se. They're making money because you're buying into the coin, you're investing in the coin to play. And that's the same model as it has for the other platforms, the sports book and the casino and all that stuff.
Okay, those are some pretty big incentives. If you guys can pull that off, and if what you say is true, that no one else is doing it, I would think some people are doing something at least similar, then good luck.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
good.
there will be competitors, but yeah, it's super exciting.
Well, we're anything else you'd like to talk about before we go?
No, not at the top of my head. I think we've
Okay.
touched on a lot of things.
Okay. If there's anything else you'd like to promote, let me know as well. I'm happy to provide some links. And otherwise, thanks for being on the podcast and sharing your insight.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Winning the Game of Life. Tune in next week for another great episode. Of course, hit subscribe and follow Dan on Instagram at @TheDanCates.